So reviewing a little bit, we're on 153. Towards the top, it's 4, and it's going through exactly what are the obligations to provide food for your workers, and correcting the Mishnah. So we ended with this. I'm going to start with it now. So 4. Chasure michsera. So they're claiming here that there's actually something left out. Chaser, absent from the Mishnah. And they're saying this is how you should read it, or this is the actual. Yeah. Chasure michasera. 153. V'achi katani. Here's how it should be. Ve'im pasak lahen mizonot. If you put that you provide food in the contract, riba lahen. It means that you give them more than the minimum, because remember, according to local custom, you have to give them food no matter what, so it shouldn't be in the contract. You don't have to put it in the contract. If you put it in the contract, you're actually obligating yourself as an employer to more than the minimum. And of course, just saying the word more means there's no limit to it either. I mean, there's a bottom. I mean, it's got to be more than the minimum, but it could the maximum could be, as they say before, it could be a meal fit for Solomon. So anyway. And so now you have the little story. Now the story makes sense that we had already, but I'll read it again. Umaseh nami Rabbi Yochanan ben Matya. So there was a story. Rabbi Yochanan, the son of Matya, Shamar Livno, said to his son, Sei schor lanu po'alim, go and hire for us workers. Halach upasak len mizonot. He in the agreement he included food. So that panicked his father, because what? You put it in the agreement? If you put it in the agreement, then you're obligating us for an infinite amount, whatever they can eat. It's an all-you-can-eat kind of, and as expensive as you like too. That's the implication. Ukishabai Tel Aviv. So when he went to his father and told him, Amarlo, he said back to him, Bini, my son, Afilo ata oselahan kisudat shlomo b'sha'ato. Even if you make a meal for him, like Solomon when he at his height, lo yatata de chavadcha. You haven't actually fulfilled your obligation, because the obligation is infinite. Because they have the dignity of being from Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, so they deserve what Solomon got. Every Jew deserves what Solomon got, but we can only afford to pay a certain amount. By putting that in the contract, you've obligated us for what they deserve, and what they deserve is infinite. But what they deserve is not necessarily what they're going to get. So just take it out of the contract. Or at least go back and specify exactly what the food is going to be in the contract. Okay. So now we have an interesting little. Well, the rabbis here are very leisurely in unpacking the halacha, and are more interested in telling stories, just like many of us. So another little diversion, because it's interesting how the way they phrase this. We owe them a meal of Solomon, because they are the sons of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So you could interpret that as saying that as sons of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, they are used to meals even better than Solomon. Right. So now we're going to have some discussion about the comparative meals, comparative luxury of the meals of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Now, by the way, when you're reading those at first, you're thinking Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob refers to just the dignity of the human being, whereas Solomon refers to luxury. So they don't take it that way. Why not? I'm not sure. I think they're kind of having fun with it. And it also gives them a chance to study these passages in the Torah about what kind of meal did Abraham offer? What kind of meal did Solomon offer? Let's take a look, and then we can have some fun with that. Yeah.
And the basis of this interpretation is that it's local custom, because there's really nothing written.
Yeah.
And so usually contracts are what's written.
Right, so this is a time where local custom was really important. Yes, I mean it creates some problems, because you can dispute what the local custom is. But, you always have judges. The judges can come and say, this is the local custom. We've lived here a long time. We've interviewed so many people, and we have an ability really to tell us what the local custom is. And I'll say again, I mean, none of this happens if there's an agreement. If there's an agreement, if everybody says, fine, I'll take a sandwich, I'm not going to sue you. All this law only becomes relevant when there's a dispute. Right. And then it's up to the rabbis, the judges, to decide, well, what was the local custom? And then they rule according to the local custom. So these are all cases that have been brought to court, different courts, yeah. Okay. So anyhow, L'meimra desudat Avraham. Does this imply that the meal of Abraham, Avinu, now page 154, Adifa made Shlomo, is preferable, more grand, more glorious. You have the Hebrew word adif there. and it's Aramaic. It just adds an olive to it. Adifa made to Shlomo from Solomon. Okay, so and that's going to be, now they're going to quote something to the contrary, but it seems to imply. Are you trying to imply that the meal of Abraham was better, greater, more luxurious than the meal of Solomon? V'hakativ, but we have an actual record of what Solomon served, and by the way, what Abraham served. So we can compare the two, and you'll see that Solomon's meal seems to be, at least on the surface, much more luxurious and grandiose. V'hakativ, vayhi lechem shlomo. So the word lechem means bread, but it means a daily provision also. Lechem in Arabic, by the way, just means food. I don't know if you knew that. So lechem sometimes in Hebrew, also in biblical Hebrew, or sometimes in the Talmud, just means food, because it was the staple. Right. So the lechem shlomo, the average meal of Solomon was liyom echad, esrim kor solat, so 20 kor. Kor is a lot. Oh, I'm sorry, I read it wrong. Yeah, I know. Wait, that's a Freudian slip. It's shloshim kor solat, so 30 kors of wheat. Shishim kor kemach, 60 kors. A kor is like a gallon, more than a gallon. I forgot it. We went through kors again. It's a huge amount. 60 kors of flour, asara bakar b'rim, 10 healthy cows. This is one meal. 10 healthy cows. Well, hang on a second. We're not done yet. Esrim bakar, so 10 healthy cows. Esrim bakar re'i, 20 cows that were re'i is kind of less. Yeah. Umeat son, and 100 sheep. Levad me ayil, also one goat. An ayil is a goat. Tzvi, a deer. V'yachmor, and a gazelle. Ubarbarim avusim, and fat. Avusim is a kind of fowl. It's hard to know exactly what they are. Kind of chicken. Yeah, this is one meal. Okay, and ve'amar. Ve'amar Gurion ben Astion. So Gurion ben Astion, by the way, just in case you're interested, his sole appearance in the Talmud, right here. This is his 15 minutes of fame. This happens sometimes. You get a guy who has one thing to say, and he says it right here, or he's only quoted one time in the Talmud, and he apparently knew something about. Well, he heard Rav say something. I guess that's what we can say, because he says to me Shmei Rav. So he was a student of Rav. And evidently not an ordained rabbi, because we don't call him rabbi, we just call him Gurion ben Astion. And he said, all that flour, halalu la'amilan shel tabachim. So, and all, the flour was just it's hard to say what this means. It was just kind of the practice flour for the cooks. Oh. So it wasn't even for the meal, and then the meal was even greater. Anyway, Rabbi Yitzchak Amar halalu letzike kedera. So he says the dough there that they're talking about was just to absorb the moisture of the kitchen. It wasn't even to eat. So what they were going to eat was even greater. Ve'amar Rabbi Yitzchak, and Rabbi Yitzchak said, Elaf nashim hayu l'shlomo. So Solomon had 1,000 wives, right? Kol achad v'chad astalo b'veita kach. Every one of those wives would make that in her individual household every meal. So Solomon ate well. Every one of his wives made that every meal. So he had a choice between 1,000 places to go and eat, and each one would have this huge, incredible meal. So the point is, how could you possibly say that Abraham had more fancy meals than Solomon? Look at this. It's good to be king. And now, by the way, so why this would imply a tremendous waste, because why would each of the 1,000 wives make this huge meal for Solomon? He can only have presumably one dinner, right? So my tama. So why would they do it? Zos v'ura shem etzli soed hayom, v'zos v'ura shem etzli soed hayom. Because one's going to think, maybe tonight's going to be my night. My lucky night. He's going to come to me. And the other one says, maybe tonight's good. So they're always preparing for him to come. Now, of course, he's very rarely going to show up. But they always have to be ready. Because if he shows up and you haven't made anything, and you haven't made a meal fit for Solomon, then he's going to be upset.
Besides which, Abraham probably ate a paleo diet.
Well, no. So right now we're just going through Solomon. We actually have a record of how Abraham ate too. And by the way, it's interesting to kind of think about. Obviously, there's some evidence here of how ancient people ate. At the same time, the evidence is how ancient people exaggerated too, because Solomon, in the Bible itself, and certainly for the rabbis, typified kind of ridiculous luxury. They had a love-hate relationship with Shlomo. He was a good king, but they certainly felt that he went overboard. The wives, the 1,000 wives, right? 1,000 wives, and all the luxury, all the food, all the slaves that he had, all the money he had. The kingdom fell apart after him also. So there's definitely some judgments against Solomon here. But it's like we would say Bill Gates, or Rockefeller, or Solomon was the guy they would point to as the guy of luxury. Trump is a better. Bill Gates actually a modest guy, except for his huge house. But right. Anyway, never mind Trump. Forget I said that. V'ilu gabe Avram, but for Abraham it says Ketiv ve'el habakar, one cow.
That's right.
Ratz Avram. He goes to the one to get one cow. Vaikach ben bakar. He takes one. Rach vatov, tender and good.
Yes.
Okay, it's tender and good.
This
But
is this week's portion, by the way.
this is this week's portion, right? And you're going to see there's if, in case you're interested in studying this week's portion a little bit, there's teachings here about hospitality because Abraham is going and making a very nice meal. Now it's not the meal that Solomon would have gotten, but it's a very nice meal for total strangers. He doesn't know at this point that they're angels. The fact is they're just total strangers, and he's being super hospitable. And you'll see that as we unpack these
We don't
verses.
discuss this at Yom Kippur.
Yeah, I know, exactly. I mean, I'm getting hungry right now. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav. So now Rav Yehuda, in the name of Rav, they're going to start the whole business of building up Abraham's meal, although it seems very hard that they're ever going to get to Solomon. But Ben Bakar Echad, so he's going to say, in fact, it was 3 cows because of the three descriptions. Ben Bakar, a cow, that's one. Rach, shnaim, tender. So he goes to 1 cow, and then he goes to a tender cow, Rach, shnaim, Vatov, and good, Shlosha. So in fact, it's 3. So all right, that's good. It's not 1,000 yet, but actually Abraham is serving 3 cows to his guests. Now, by the way, so think about this for a second. We know because we know the Torah by heart. We know how many guests was this? 3. 3 angels come. So a cow for each person. That's pretty good. I mean, even the most luxurious restaurants, you're rarely going to get a cow. Right. So, and plus, that isn't all he had. Okay, but let's go on.
But you don't eat the whole cow.
What?
You don't eat the whole
But
cow.
you should need quite a bit of it. I mean,
Abraham probably did at that time.
Anyway, so page 155. Hatam. So for Abraham, Tlata Ture to Tlata Gavre. Okay, so there the proportions are each person gets a cow. Yes, you don't eat the whole cow, but there's plenty that's edible in the cow. Hacha, now with Solomon, it seems like a lot, but now we find out something about Solomon. L'chol Yisrael v'Yehuda. Solomon's meals were meant to feed the entire population. So this also, they say there's something interesting about Solomon. Everybody was invited to dinner. Now, it didn't mean everybody came, but you could show up to Solomon's castle and you would get fed. So, but the proportion is going to be less. You're not going to get a full cow just by showing up. And the reason they had to make so much is because they were feeding the entire population. Shinat Mar, and there actually is a verse here, Yehuda Yisrael, Rabim Kechol Asher Aliyam. And Judah and Israel, the population of the 2 provinces, they weren't 2 countries at that time, but 2 provinces that made up the kingdom of Solomon were as numerous as the sands of the sea. So that was a lot of people. So it's what seems like a huge amount of food, maybe was a reasonable amount of food, a nice meal, but nothing compared to Abraham. So now what we've discovered is that Abraham served his guests better than Solomon served his guests. Now, he only had 3 guests, but still. All right. We finished that. So that's why we say that a Jew deserves a meal of Abraham as opposed to a meal of Solomon, because the Abraham meal is actually more. There's more there. Okay. Now we're going to start looking at all these foods that they served, as long as we're on the topic.
It's not a meal that Abraham or Solomon would have eaten. It's a meal that they would have served.
I know, that's very important too. You'll see that, yes. It's a meal that they would serve. Yes, and remember who you are. So now we start to get to the point of all this. This whole stuff is aimed at the employer. So if Abraham's going to serve total strangers coming in from the street this luxurious meal, then you owe your workers something more than just a sandwich. I mean, that's now maybe you can't afford more. If you can't afford more, okay, then you're going to put that in the contract. That's all you can afford. But if in terms of deserving, so what they really deserve, what people deserve, everyone deserves a fine meal. That's kind of what they're saying. And you as an employer who are taking care of your employees, you really owe them something that's more than just, a glass of water, whatever the minimum might be. And I think that implication is clear just beneath the surface here. Because Abraham's hospitality is one of the things we learn about him and that we're supposed to admire and emulate. Achnasat orchim. All right, my baburim avusim. So what are these fatted fowls that they would serve? Big chickens, whatever they might be. Amar Rav, she'ovsim otam bal korchan. We're going to learn something about ancient agriculture, that you fatten them against their will. In other words, you force feed them. I don't know how they force fed in those days.
They had cages, just like they do now.
So how do you force feed? I'm not sure they do.
Like foie gras, maybe they stick a tube down.
They stick a tube down. Well, I guess the tube is not really advanced technology. They knew how to do that too. Anyway, so Rav suggests that's what fatted fowl means, force feeding. Shmuel Amar she'avusim v'omdim me'alehem, and he said maybe I'm not sure if there's concern for animals here or not. I think we are sensitive to this idea of force feeding because we read about organic farms and free-range chickens and also foie gras. I don't know if that's going on at all. I don't know if they felt it was cruel to force feed animals, but Samuel has a different opinion. It's just that they wouldn't force feed them. They'd let them eat whatever they want, but they didn't run around very much. And by not running around very much, they ended up getting fatter. Okay. But they become fat on their own. So it wasn't as if that sounds a little less cruel. And I have no idea did that with the kind of cages they had, or I know that there are rules in the Torah about taking care of your animals, and there is concern for the animals. I don't know if that's reflected in these verses, in this argument, though. Yeah.
You may just want to defer this question, but it always puzzles me why animals treated this way are kosher, because we're so ethical, we don't cook it with its mother's milk. This seems to be cruel.
Right. I mean, you can make an argument that it is that one of the bases of keeping kosher is to slaughter the animal in a humane way, less painful way. So if you're raising the animal in conditions of utter misery, you could certainly make the argument that it's not kosher. It's not keeping with and that's where the argument becomes: is kashrut just a technicality where you follow the rules, or is there a philosophical basis to it? If there's a philosophical basis to it, then you have to be thinking about that philosophical basis and expand it or take away from it. For instance, it's an interesting discussion we had in rabbinical school. If there was a more humane way of killing an animal. Obviously, they developed the most humane way of killing an animal. They developed in the 4th, 5th century. What if now, with our own science, we came up with more humane ways? Wouldn't that make more sense? So traditionalists would say no. We have the rule. The rule is the knife, and that's the knife. And they're looking away from the philosophical basis. But if you're looking at the philosophical basis, maybe more progressive, whatever you want to call it, then maybe you look at the more humane ways. And even on the faculty of the seminary, there were disagreements. I mean, there was one guy that said, absolutely, if there was a more humane way. Now, he believed, it's interesting, because he was also a traditionalist, he believed that knife, if it was done right, remained the most humane way. But probably it's not. I'm not an expert, but my guess is there are more humane ways. There are people, Temple Grant, and there are experts on this that are working on it still. And certainly the shackling and hoisting that goes on doesn't seem very humane, and yet that's kosher. I mean, it's the knife, and it's exactly what you're supposed to do, but it's more the letter of the law than the spirit of the law. So I'm glad you brought that up because I think it is important. Okay, Rabbi Yochanan Amar mivi'im tur mimar ito bidalo anis v'tarna golet me'ashbata medalo anis. So they would bring an ox from its pasture and stop forcing it to work. And a fowl from the dung heap where she was kind of, that's the free range, kind of, because the dung heap is where the fowl would go, the chicken would go to look for food. And then just kind of give them a more contained area. So you'd stop the ox from working, because if the ox is working, it's not going to get fat. And you stop the chicken from running around. And so they won't get fat, but you don't force feed them. So that's their suggestion for how to get a fatted fowl, a fowl that's going to be fatter than usual. My guess is the chickens that we all eat, those of us that eat chicken, are unless you're buying free range chicken, it's a standard that it's not running around free. Absolutely. And same thing with the cows too; they're not running around free. I mean, they're made to be eaten. So here you actually have some sense that there was dual use for a cow, an oxen would be used as an animal, a beast of burden, and maybe, at some point would be eaten. Now I don't think we would have that at all. Yeah. So anyway, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Muvchar behemot shor. So now they're having a discussion about food. So the best kind of cattle is an ox. I think he means for eating. I didn't even know people ate oxen, to be honest. Yeah, but Rabbi Yochanan saying that's the best. Muvchar sheba'afot tarnagolet. What?
The tail.
Only
Oh, the tail, right? Oxtail soup, of course.
Right.
I never thought of that. Yeah. Right. All right. So, but I don't know if Rabbi Yochanan's thinking about that. He's thinking that's muvchar. By the way, it doesn't just mean the best; it's the choicest, which has the sense of luxury there. You know, rich people eat oxen. The best fowl is a chicken. Okay, so I think we still agree with that. Amar Meimar, and a Meimar has something else. Zagta ukmeta be vatnita demishtacha bene atzere delomatia pasik kanya. Okay, and so Meimar has his own, a fat-bellied black hen, which is found among the wine presses that cannot step over a reed. So he knows a particular kind of chicken that he knows that he likes to eat. And you can see it happens to be a chicken that can't do any exercise, and so it can't move very much, so it automatically becomes fat. All right. Now we're going to go back to Abraham, yeah, and analyzing what Abraham ate, and a couple of these verses which are going to come up in this week's Torah reading in Lech Lecha. And this is the scene where he has these guests who turn out to be angels, and he feeds these people, but he doesn't know that they're angels. Yeah. Okay. Ve'ela bakar ratz Avraham. So Abraham ran. By the way, of course, this is an example of his great hospitality, that he's running. He's got guests, so he hops to it. You got to feed the guests. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav ben bakar echad. We heard this already. So he goes for a calf, 1. Rach, tender, that's 2. Vatov, shlosha, and it's good. It's not just 1, it's actually 3. All right, but 156. The ema chad. But he's saying, in fact, we should say it's 1, because it really, in the pshat there, it sounds like it's just 1. It's a tender and good calf. We're not talking about 3 things just because there's 3 descriptions. We're talking about 1 thing. Kida amra inashe, because that's how people talk. Rakich vitav. There's a phrase that says tender and good. So why are you saying that it's 3? And by the way, 1 would certainly be enough to feed 3 people. One cow would be enough to feed. Why would he go and get 3? Because we're just trying to build him up as someone who is super hospitable. But also there's going to be some waste there too. But anyway, so they're doing some exegesis here. Im kein lichtov rach tov. Okay, but if it was just 1, it would say tender good. My vatov, the fact that there's an extra letter there, the vav, you don't need the letter. So this is a rabbinic rule of exegesis. Whenever there's a letter there that you don't need, it's telling you something extra. What's the something extra that it's telling you? Whatever I want it to say. And that's the rule. Whatever I want to prove is proved by that extra letter. So what we want to prove right now is that it wasn't just 1 calf that Abraham got. It was 3. So we've got that extra letter. So that can prove that it was 3. No, actually, it would only prove that it was 2 because you get that 1 letter. Shema min ali drasha. So we learned that I can now interpret that vav as meaning something else. Ema tre, but that would leave us only 2 cows because you got 1 vav. Okay. Now, made it tov li drasha. Well, because I can interpret now the word good. Rach nami li drasha. It means I can also interpret the word rach, which means tender. I can also make a different interpretation with that. So that vav serves double use. This is a very stretched kind of exegesis, but it would be a mistake to take this altogether seriously. They're having some fun here, right? And trying to, or maybe trying to build up Abraham, build up his hospitality. Anyway, so it's 3, but let's keep going. Almost done. Metiv Rabba bar Ula. V'itema Rav Hoshaya. So an objection came to Rabba, the son of Ula, or some people say it same from Rav Hoshaya. V'itema Rav Nachman b'Rabbi Hoshaya, or maybe it came from Rav Natan, the son of Rav Hoshaya. V'yitein el ha'nahar, v'yimaher lasoto. He gave it to his servant. The nahar is a servant, and he went to cook it. Notice that neither Abraham nor Sarah cook here. They hand it off to their servants. So they were wealthy. They had servants. What?
Sarah baked.
Well, later we'll find out stuff that she did. But in terms of making the cow, neither of them make it. Abraham goes and gets it, but he hands it. But the problem here is that the verb is in the singular. He handed it. It's not 3. Not he handed them. It should be them if it's 3. He handed it. So we're back to him only having 1. Now the answer is kol chad v'chad yaveh lenar chad. Well, each one he gave 1 after another. So he didn't take 3 and hand them over to the son, to the servant. He said, here's 1, here's 1, here's 1. So you would use the singular in each of those. Right. Dekama dematia aite lekamahu. He gave each one by one. Oh, wait a second. I may have skipped something.
A lot of text on this issue.
Yeah, I know there is. Yeah. Oh, sorry. I skipped. Kol chad v'chad yahave lenar chad. Okay. Now we come to something that's very difficult, and they skip the obvious difficulty, but I think we're going to get back to it. Okay. So now we're continuing to, yes, a lot of text on this one scene. They're continuing to analyze the meal that he served. All right. So now they've come to the conclusion that he served 3 cows, one for each guy. Notice if you read it that Abraham's not eating too. That's interesting also. So he's serving to which becomes a kind of Bedouin custom that you serve your guest and you let them eat and you don't necessarily eat. You watch them eat. Okay. Vayikach chema v'chalav uven bakar asher asa vayitein lifnehem. So he took the butter and the milk and the cow that was made and he gave to them. Okay. So 2 difficulties. One we're going to ignore.
Yeah.
So one difficulty is that's milk and meat. Like what's going on, Abraham? So we have all sorts of possible explanations for that.
Before the
So it was before the Torah. So the most common is that this is before the giving of the Torah.
Right.
So you could eat whatever you wanted to in those days. And what did Abraham know from milk and meat? That doesn't happen until later in the Torah. All right. So but the thing is, some rabbis will say that the patriarchs Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob through prophecy, Ruach HaKodesh, did know and basically followed all the commandments that were yet to come. So why is he serving milk and meat? So another explanation is that he didn't eat, remember? And these were non-Jews, so they weren't bound, as far as he knew, they were non-Jews. I mean, because he's the only Jew.
Yeah,
so chances are this was a non-Jew. Right, I mean, by process of elimination, if I'm the only Jew in the world, it's likely that you're not a Jew. Or his family, they're not part of the family. That's why intermarriage was such a big problem in those days. It'd be very hard. Like there was no J date because there was just Isaac was the only guy on J date. There was nobody else. Like the poor guy so you had to marry a non-Jew and then convert her. It was harder. Now you go on J date, you can find somebody.
Is this word promote the same?
How do we get on the J date? That's not.
You brought that up, Dave.
Is this word promote the same?
Okay, so the final way of interpreting this is that butter doesn't mean butter and milk doesn't mean milk. So the rabbis in different places go through all these possibilities that the words actually don't mean butter and milk, that the law wasn't given yet, and that anyway it was for non-Jews. So what do we care what they eat?
Or you serve the milk and butter first, and they wait half an hour.
Right, yeah. I hadn't thought of that one, but that's possible. But the real difficulty here is, let's get back to the real difficulty is again the grammar, which implies that he handed them 1 cow when he served the meal. So you could get around it saying when he hands it to the boy to cook, 1, 1, 1. But now it says when he served it, he served 1 cow with the milk and the butter together. Okay, so we'll solve that issue next week.